Hi everyone. So today we'll focus on in continuation of our discussion for last couple of days. We'll be talking about the protocols, particularly the internet protocols, net neutrality, and why OTTs and others should be paying some kind of royalty because there are a lot of deals which are happening in the offline world, and that is actually hampering uh, the internet protocol to work in a manner because a lot of um, due diligence is required when you are doing deals, particularly the brand endorsement deals. So I'll wait for a while and then we'll start off. So first we are going to talk about net neutrality. Although this topic is not been discussed, but I personally feel in all capacities of my understanding of different protocols and the kind of work I've been doing almost for more than 2 decades, apart from my I've been on internet for the longest time. I mean, I came on internet in the 1990s. But perhaps when I entered the intellectual property rights, definitely the landscape actually changed. And not only the landscape changed, a lot of operators are working currently because everybody is coming with a mandate saying that we are solving something. And there are some problems which are not problems per se, but they are being orchestrated in a manner which is I personally believe is creating the biggest chaos in terms of what blockchain is all about, what is the function of DAO, which is decentralized autonomous organization, how to keep the internet clean, and perhaps the very basic framework of even creating any kind of model that is basically nothing but algorithms at the back end. And particularly right now, this www dot it's not, it does not belong to one country. There are many folks who just send a message, you belong, like, you're, where are you from? But that doesn't belong to any country. because I can always use the CDNs, and I can be jumping from one node to the other at any given point of time. And there are so many zillion protocols which are working right now. However, the point of contention here is to understand net neutrality first in a manner in which it should be understood. Then perhaps I'll walk you through some frameworks which are already there in the public domain. And when something is in the public domain, the irony of the matter is, when we are talking about, so one is, if I talk about different agencies of United Nations, one is definitely WIPO, that is World Intellectual Property Organization, and it has been very fruitful for anyone and everyone who has filed before this WIPO. But at the same point of time, it's not that the data set there also is 100% correct, because there are zillion instances whereby I personally, orchestrated and draw the framework of these technologies, but the name of the firm, the agent is different, because this was something called as a KPO stuff, which is knowledge process outsourcing, just to give it a nomenclature. At the same point of time, a lot of players started playing around at, everybody was working in silos. And perhaps the whole orchestration of something which is called a startup, it never existed, particularly in the late 2005, 2006, till perhaps 2013, 2014, and then everybody started talking about it. However, the main framework or whatever I had worked on, whether it's telecommunication, whether it's backup technologies, whether it's healthcare, those frameworks were formed somewhere from the year 2007 to 2011. So they are very strong frameworks. It is something where a lot of things are not in the online world, and perhaps since I have signed these non-disclosure forms, I can't be talking about it. But I know for a matter of fact, because the orchestration is being done in a manner where zillion players are trying to play out their way out, because everybody wants, a piece of the pie, but they don't understand um, the intel of the intellect can never be shared as a pie. It grows, because the more you share, it's kind of a wisdom tree which will grow, because the more knowledge you gain, the orchestration is in a manner where you are aligning yourself with the uh, biggest biggest understanding of what energy is all about. Because again, that is also a sub understanding of different portals, because right now there is marriage of science, arts, commerce, everything. I mean, uh, the biggest treat to the uh, current world, the way we see it, is the way everything is being orchestrated, and particularly from the standpoint view of World Wide Web. But the irony of the matter, or on the contrary, the problem statement, and this is one of the biggest problem statement right now, that the input data provided, where stakeholders, our government organization themselves, the biggest enterprises themselves, they have diluted the brands. When I say dilution of the brand, that means the ethos with which the luxury brands were built over the years. I would rather go back to the era of 1990 till 2010. I mean, if those 20 years, I mean, brands were built and they had to be nurtured. However, after perhaps, just give me a moment. I have to take a break of around 5 minutes or so, because I just ordered lunch and it's here. The good thing about India is we have so much competition in the app era. So that is something which is commendable. So a lot of things are good about India, but at the same point of time, a lot of input data is wrong. So whatever is being developed out of that input data and being trained is not able to get to the output data or the correct, because we can't even have a hypothesis, because when the basic data is wrong, whatever you wish to create will never happen. So I'll just take a break of 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. And if you have any questions, put your questions in the comment box, and we'll take it from there. Okay, we'll start with the adaptive layer, that is ABR design. Okay, I'll just share the screen so that we can get some folks. Okay, so um, we are first going to talk about classification, and then we are going to go deep into this arrangement of the framework. But before that, let's talk about there are zillion protocols which have been layered onto the internet for orchestrating the communication network. I'm trying to use very simple words. Perhaps I'll be utilizing some of the technical words also. But the intent here is to um, understand the framework in terms of how it can be utilized to create strong models from the cybersecurity point of view, because the most detrimental state of affairs is with the senior citizens and the child. And perhaps the human capacity building has to be done for the adults so that they know and they can stop the cybersecurity threat for the senior citizens. Um, for the seniors, it's very important that they deactivate their OTPs and everything, and don't activate the online activation of the bank accounts, because that is a good way. Though it is a streamlining is good, but there are, or I would say, there's a big data set in India, perhaps, where there's a disconnect and the families are dysfunctional. When I say dysfunctional families, is because of the trust issues, um, the OTPs and everything, they are being um, looked upon by the seniors themselves. But at the same point of time, it's very easy to create embodiments where the seniors are attacked in terms of the cyber drill. And a lot of data set I was ongoing in terms of whatever was being retrieved. uh, from the viewpoint of the protocols, it's very important that most of the uh, and this is basically what the network people need to do at the back end, so that very stringent protocols can be deployed, and that saves a lot of money for the candidates who are utilizing the infra of the internet in one or more ways. Because in the patenting or in the framework language, we use the word at least. At least always denotes one or more. That being said, let's talk about the protocols, or just kind of like, although there's a term which is utilized by many of the folks, but personally I don't like that term. um, the word pipe is utilized a lot. However, I would rather say um, it's the orifice having a cylindrical kind of dimension where loads of codes are being coded and decoded at the same point of time. So, say for example, there is you have MP3 files, different files. Okay, let's not even talk about MP3 files. Let me make it more simple. If there is something in terms of now, even the word movie is being questioned. Why I say so? Because movie is nothing but an orchestration of different scenarios supposed to do something, and in many cases you will see it is to be continued, because all these OTT platforms are doing that only. So all these files, which, let's make it more simple, video files, so they can reach over HTTP, which is nothing but a download pipe for from the web. And then you have these HLS and the dash, which is nothing but not nothing, it is much more deeper, but for the common person it is like an adaptive streaming. So the framework I wanted to discuss right now is, um, let's get into the classification part. So we have, because there's a lot of launch of so many devices, but at the same point of time, um, too much of logging on to the internet has its repercussions and is very well published by different authorities globally. And this research is not a research of today. This research has been ongoing since 2000 plus, because John McCarthy and team had developed everything at a very basic framework for what we are looking at right now, and it's just more layers are being developed over the same, and these are nothing but the stacks. So layers are nothing but stacks in very simple words. So so if you have a wearable computing device is something which you can wear, right? This is handheld device. So the example in this particular case is a belt, and the classification is G06F 1/163. And then we have G061 slash 1684, which is constructional details or arrangement related to integrated input output peripherals not covered under the group, which is basically G06F1 slash 1635 and 1675. So um, when the candidates are utilizing, these, they have these devices, right? So um, these devices which are handheld in nature, there is a lot of interaction, because this, whatever we're discussing, is an interaction. So this technique, which is based on GUI, which is graphical user interface, um, having the features provided by the input device could be the handheld device, and the functions are controlled by the rotation of a mouse with dual sensing arrangement or the nature of the input device. Example, tap gestures. So tap gestures, like, when we are doing augmented reality training, so a lot of gesture training is there, um, which is basically based on pressure sensed by digitizer using touchscreen, and it has a lot of input commands, which is nothing but the gestures. So if you have watched these sci-fi movies, you will see a lot of gesture control in that. And then we have tokenization, which is 606, um, G06F 40 slash 284. Lexical analysis, that is tokenization, or collocates. I like this. I'll further research on this. Okay. And for the mood, for the EQ part, which we had discussed yesterday, so you have to go back to the previous video. And these videos are nothing but a kind of a movie. Movie is like, it's kind of a documentary where uh, we are documenting our analysis so that it can be utilized for the betterment of the society in any way possible, and for the creation of the white economy. So we have G06F2203 slash 011. Basically, that relates to emotion or mood input determined on the basis of sensed human body parameters. So this is basically, doing the determination. And this is like pulse, heart rate, beat, temperature of the skin, facial expression. Then inside the eye, we have the iris, voice pitch, brain activity patterns. And for the speech to text systems, we have G10L 15 slash 26. Okay. Um, so this is augmenting natural language. I like this. We will further discuss this. Okay. Um, so we have to look through a mirror or through a window of understanding. Now, again, this has nothing to do with the brands. Let me tell you, when I use these words, please don't relate these to the brands and then, build your protocols, because that doesn't work. Because the ethos of this discussion is utilizing the protocols which is not impacting the intellectual property rights, and it has nothing to do with the brands. That being said, this is basically the understanding of net neutrality and the protocol equality. So the main understanding here is, I'll just write it down for folks to look into this. Okay, perhaps in this particular case, so when we talk about data traffic, so data, the technology behind the data traffic, there are loads of parameters. So it is different depending upon the transfer method which is utilized for the transfer of the data. And to proponents of net neutrality, this actually suggests, or the basic understanding, which has been the understanding, it can always change, is prioritizing one transfer protocol over another, which is generally unprincipled. Unprincipled means it's not having a kind of a playbook, and that's what Trade Secret is all about. And that is what we need to embrace. Perhaps I talked about it after 1st of April 2020. This is a new world order. We are not living in the previous world, although we were born before 2020 and whatever our years are, because there are loads of players in the market. Players here are the candidates. So players are nothing to do with the playing games. These are the candidates who are utilizing internet in any way possible. That can be a basic internet protocol also. Um, then we have, so this particular one. So I talked about something which we can utilize. So is utilizing heat maps. And utilizing heat maps is basically in the physical world. So perhaps how the heat map would be utilized. Right now, it's a very festive season in India. I am where I am right now. The number of people who are here in the vicinity, maybe 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, or perhaps 1 kilometer, 100 meters, 1,000 meters, that heat map becomes one heat map. And that heat map can be given a nomenclature. However, the nomenclature has to be in cognizance with how many are, the players, or I would rather say, have who are the candidates of the infra. Say, for example, in India, we have Airtel. So, how many people are the uh, customers of Airtel? So, that is one data set. So the analysis becomes very easy. And that's how it should be done so that the cyber protocol can be built, which is very robust in overall capacity. Okay, in this particular case, it is emotion augmenting text. So, it's a very interesting thing. What is happening in this particular case is, there's input of plain text. So text, plain input. It can be on a note also. um, then you are running a rule engine, which is nothing but modules and submodules, which looks for linguistic pattern tied to emotion cognition. I would like to define this word further. It's actually, in this particular case, it's emotio cognition. It's not even emotion, or perhaps maybe language error. So, or I would say emoticon or emojis. Um, okay. So it's basically matching surface language cues against a rule set, scoring that cue on one or more human dimensions like trust, I would rather say trust, respect, fun, all the positive connotations. And that is where, if any candidate is going or diverting from the positive connotation and asking those questions, that is where there has to become some kind of determination steps. And we have been conducting these experiments very often, and this has to stop. But at the same point of time, this cannot be point of discussion and saying that, hey, you are providing this kind of portal, so because there's so many cases happening in US right now. And that should not happen, because the control is not with the portal. The control should be at the back end, where there's the parents, and of course somebody who is 20 years biologically plus. I think they're adults. They cannot be treated as kids, and they should not be treated as kids. That's another matter, that countries like India still people stay together. That doesn't mean that they don't have a life. um, Nuclear families are something which is a big proponent in India, but at the same point of time, many people are living under the same roof also. So that is one thing. But I just want to talk about and get back to the emotive cognition. And there is perhaps a fixed dimension vector, and the elements can have, I personally like to give at least 100 uh, value for one particular dimension of vector. But in this particular case, whatever it is, they are taking positive force as +1, negative force as -1, neutral is 0, and perhaps alpha, delta, gamma, they are saying not present. um, the good thing about the understanding of the matrix, not the movie matrix, but from the mathematical viewpoint, it's very important to have an understanding of the ingress and the egress of the data sets. And let me tell you, the best of the input comes when you are very innovative and never ever disclose your trade secret. That is very important. Don't disclose your mathematical formulas, because there are ways and means to avoid that. Then there's something called as NIH says this, that emotion and cognition are deeply integrated in the brain rather than separate modules. Honestly, I agree to disagree, because there are loads of parameters which have to be taken into consideration. Just because there were use candidates who were 200 or 300 in number, you cannot say that it is applicable to everyone. And that is where Section 3 of the Indian Patent Act comes very handy, because technical advancement has to be done in a manner where it is technical advancement. We cannot allow the Indian passport holders to be guinea pigs in the hand of the whatever the foreign counterparts are. But at the same point of time, there are a lot of innovations also which has a deeper impact, because technology has evolved so much. And somehow India and China are, I would rather say, they are already married in terms of the kind of people. A lot of Indians are living in China, is nobody talks about it. I mean, though they are living in silos, but it's a big population of Indians who have already migrated to China. So that is something which one needs to see, as far as taking those data sets from the Indian passport office at the back end. So this has to be done by the government people. um, so when we talk about stimulus, what is stimulus? Now I'll just talk about two more parameters, and I want to wind it up, because half of the video was just on mute. um, there is a word called as threshold. um, Threshold itself can have many meanings. Like, if I the first thing which is coming to my mind right now is, threshold is the break point of anything and everything. How much uh, of whatever you are trying to push to get the data set out from the other person is the threshold. um, that being said, somebody told me uh, a very profound line, but maybe I'll use it some other day. So the point is, how you keep the data set as a secret, that is what is going to keep, or that is what is going you to evolve to the next level. So when you're working on any kind of tech, and particularly with these AI stuff and the data sets, try to get the real data with the consent, have proper consent, have proper documentation, and reward the candidate. Because when you are rewarding the candidate, you will get good data set. That is very important. So the threshold is a distraction. It's kind of a mild distraction according to this particular framework. And the second higher threshold is stronger randomized stimulus. Rather than random, I'll go for dynamic and personalized, and can broadcast color coded state to bystanders. broadcast color coded state to people who are around and to the clinical people. So clinical people can be the nurses, people who are serving the hospitals. So it's nothing to do with the hospitality industry, but real doctors who have real MBBS and then whatever additions they have, diplomas and MDs and whatnot. And the other thing is the dynamic emotion timeline drives pulsing in this particular case because it's a belt. We talked about it, right? So this belt has pulsing LED. LED is light emitting diode, but at the same point of time, we need to look into the heat dissipation also. So make sure that this is taken care of. And it has vibration patterns that evolves as the wearer state shifts. So it's an interesting case. However, the question is how much one needs to be in sync with devices, bells, and the primary architecture of how a candidate is carrying himself or herself on a daily basis. Just to wrap it off, obviously Meta has launched whatever they have launched. Congratulations on that part, because it's nothing but branding of two, three brands, and a lot of other factors are involved. But say, for example, this particular, oh my God, my hair. Okay, so this um, honestly speaking, if everybody wears that Rayman stuff or whatever the Meta Ray-Ban collab is, um, so if you're walking on the street, if anybody is walking on the street, or perhaps a third party is walking on the street, um, the due diligence part can be done just with this, because every data will come um, on the iris. Now, the impact of this, I myself have seen this way back. Now it's not even a decade, almost 15, 16 years back. Because when you're logged on to the internet for very long and you're actually logged on, there is impact to the stimulus of the brain. And that itself would be a study in this case. So perhaps this stuff of Meta and the collab which is happening, it has to be in a controlled format. Otherwise, it can be a menace also at the same point of time. And let me tell you, menace would be you will be seeing the menace in next 90 to 120 days if the control is not controlled. So that's how it is. And that is for the control to be controlled, they have to be kept in a commune. So when you are in a commune, you are well guarded, and obviously the candidates who are not able to overcome the effect of it, because one can get out of it, but it takes a lot of time and effort, and every candidate is different. So um, different kind of therapies would be deployed just to get that person out of it. So if I'm giving a choice, I would love to try it, but just on a basis of on a scale of 1 to 10, it will be number 2 for that. Okay, thank you for watching out this video. Have a great weekend ahead. And we talked a lot about these stuff. I'll write and collate everything in an article format. That's what the uh, intent is. Let's see if I'm able to do it today itself. Have a great weekend ahead. Bye for now. Ciao.